I'd now like to ask Jamie Gorelick to present our next award. Jamie is a partner at Wilmer-Hale, and she served as Deputy Attorney General of the United States from 1994 to 1997 during the Clinton administration. Jamie, great to see you.
Thank you, Robert. Well, that's quite an act to follow. Wow. Thank you, Robert, for that introduction. You know, when I once needed someone to introduce me at an award when I was going to get an award, and Nina's advice was to pick someone funny. Well, I'm actually not so funny, but she's very funny, so I don't need to be. First of all, she has morphed a perfectly wonderful Jewish name into nouns of everyday life in Washington. Her interns are Totenbergs. NPR gift bags are Totenbags. And when she politely but firmly elbowed her way up the Supreme Court steps to interview Arnold Schwarzenegger, and this was caught on camera and went viral, she was named the Totenator. Apropos of which, she has proudly called herself a pushy broad. When she started at the then nascent National Public Radio, Cokie Roberts was despondent because no news outlet would let a woman write, let alone be heard. Nina walked her resume around, and 2 weeks later, Cokie was hired. Joined by Linda Wertheimer, the three of them became the founding mothers, making an imprint on journalism forever and breaking barriers for so many. Now, I saw that charming pushiness myself in the aforementioned event surrounding the return of the Ames Stradivarius, which had been stolen from Nina's musician father, Roman Totenberg, decades before. And it was discovered when someone tried to sell it. So Nina went to work to get it back from the FBI, and quickly. Her sisters stood in astonishment as Nina just pushed back every legal and bureaucratic obstacle. But the best move was holding out to the United States Attorney the possibility of a joint press conference with her if he would set the ceremonial return of the violin right away. The event, on Nina's timetable, was on the front pages of every paper, and on the evening news, the U.S. Attorney got what he needed, and Nina and her sisters got their violin. She has never forgotten the sisterhood. She's an unbelievably loyal and supportive friend to scores of women, and I am very thankful to count myself among them. She's the very best interviewer of Ruth Ginsburg, getting her to open up to history, to make clear that feistiness that has made Ruth the phenomenal lawyer and jurist that she has been. Nina notes with poignancy the pressure on Sandra Day O'Connor when she was the only woman on the court for years, and she worried every day that a misstep would reflect poorly on her entire gender. And Nina notes with joy the real impact on the court of observations that only a woman could make. She's a great reporter. Newsweek called her the creme de la creme of NPR. Sorry, Robert. But my favorite moniker is from Vanity Fair, which called Nina the Queen of Leaks. And if you remember anything about the Clarence Thomas or Douglas Ginsburg confirmation hearings, you know why. She also published a secret list of possible Nixon judicial appointees, and the resulting uproar put the kibosh on every one of them. And she also wrote an article called The 10 Dumbest Members of Congress. Senator William Scott, who was number one on that list, promptly called a press conference to deny that he was dumb. Nina protects her sources. Her and David's dinner table is frequented by judges and lawyers of every stripe and every station, and her sources trust her, and she protects them. And I can tell you this myself. So when I invited Nina to my swearing in as Deputy Attorney General, and she came up to congratulate me, and she whispers to me, "Don't hug me." And I tried to understand why. She was right. Otherwise, later, when she quoted a senior departmental official, I would be outed. So she was protecting me. In an increasingly hip and millennial world, Nina is decidedly and defiantly classy. At the same time, she is entirely irreverent, describing her wonderful husband, Dr. David Rines, who was working the room at the Oscars when the documentary RBG was nominated. Nina said David could schmooze a sock. That irreverence has permeated her reporting because she can put things in terms that listeners can understand, explaining how it feels on a personal level to be a Supreme Court justice. She says 9 people who are and know they will be together for the rest of their lives. This is marriage without divorce. Her reporting is not just to the point, it is fearless. Even as a kid reporter writing for the National Observer in the 1970s, you could see that. She was asked to do an in-depth profile of none other than J. Edgar Hoover. She reported meticulously and fairly, but Hoover, of course, only wanted laudatory press, and he wrote a 3-page, single-spaced letter to her editors, basically asserting that everything that she was about to say was a lie. She and her editors stood up to him and printed his letter side by side with every jot of evidence that she had gathered. That fearlessness is reflected in the huge number of awards that Nina has received. The George Foster Peabody Award, the George Polk Award, 7 different awards from the American Bar Association for legal reporting. And she's gotten scores of honorary degrees, all of which are a testament to how beloved Nina is. On top of all of that, Nina is a loving and fun-loving wife and friend, the appointed aunt and grandmother of so many kids, and most important, a generous and giving person, always there when she is needed. So I am so proud to present the very aptly named Women in Power Award to Nina Totenberg.
The man who just kissed me on the way up was Jamie's husband. That tells you something about the sisterhood of Washington. I am hugely honored to be here playing myself. Last year I was here playing the role of Ruth Bader Ginsburg because she'd just broken 3 ribs. I have to say that playing Ginsburg was a lot easier than playing myself because everyone felt sorry for me and laughed at everything I said last year. So first let me say that she's home. It was a nasty 36 hours of fever and chills, but she seems to be okay. And the inimitable Dr. David Rines dropped off some chicken soup for her on her way in here today. So because you are used to me being funny, and I am actually not funny, I have racked my brains, or what passes for my brains, for something funny to say. And as I was leaving work on Friday night, my sister, one of my 2 wonderful sisters, blood sisters that is, sent me this from GQ magazine, formerly known as Gentleman's Quarterly. There had been a piece in GQ, and probably online, about Colonel Vindman, and this was a correction note to readers. This story has been updated. Alexander Vindman received a Purple Heart after being wounded by an IED or improvised explosive device, not an IUD or intrauterine device. We regret the error. Yes, a man wrote the piece. Now, let me say that Jamie, in that wonderful account of my very great power in the return of the violin, neglected to say the first thing that I did, which is to call Jamie and say, I need a lawyer. I want this violin back soon, quick. I don't want to diddle-daddle. I want to pay off the insurance company and get it back and get it restored. And I said, so can you recommend somebody? And she said, what's wrong with me? Now, of course, Jamie had an ace up her sleeve. Just so happens she had just recruited into Wilmer-Hale a woman who had for 15 years been the head of the art theft division in the Department of Justice. So this worked out just great, and I don't know of any major multi-million-dollar piece of art of any kind, Stradivarius or painting or anything, that was returned to its rightful owner in 5 weeks. But they did it, and in no small measure because of Jamie and her colleague. Let me say that it really is amazing to be in the company of the men and women this magazine is honoring tonight and has honored over the years. Frankly, I would rather talk about Nadine Epstein, who has managed to do something truly astounding in the publishing world. She has remade a magazine into something so interesting and so different that people want to read it and support it. So I, for one, would like to salute Nadine and all the Moment magazine readers and supporters who are here tonight. I don't have my glass here, so you'll all have to raise your glasses, but I want to raise a glass to Nadine. Now, since I genuinely did not have a clue what to say this evening, I asked Nadine for guidance, and she gave me a couple of ideas, but the truth is that I am something of a deadline dick in journalism. I have never written a book because I think you should want to have something important to say in a book, and what I have that's important to say, I say every day, and it's the news. It's the best I can do anyway. And I don't write opinion pieces because, well, my opinions frequently are wrong. So when I started out as a journalist a very long time ago, by most of my colleagues' estimations anyway, and it is a long time, I was almost always the only woman in the room for the first 2 decades of my professional life. Nothing has pleased me more than to have seen our numbers grow and grow in journalism and everywhere else. My husband, David, who started a new surgical residency program at Fairfax Hospital when he married me and moved here 20 years ago, was among the men who promoted women in surgery when they were an anomaly there. Now, it takes some adjusting to do things differently than we did before. I remember when he came home one day threatening to slit his wrists if any more female residents came into his office crying. And I said to him back then, David, when will you understand that when women are exhausted and frustrated, they cry? And when men are exhausted and frustrated, they scream at people. Now, which of these is more disruptive to the workplace? And he said to me, I got it. And he has never complained since about crying female residents ever. Now, I would maintain that they don't cry as much as they did back then because there are more of them. They support each other. And since I'm being honored for women in power, I think really the most important thing I can say is not that I've done something very special. I've certainly done things that I'm proud of. But we have done things, and we have helped each other and made all of us so much more powerful and so much more effective. And we have made sure that now women are not an anomaly. We are not the only women in the room. We are there in equal numbers and sometimes more of us. And guess what? We're as good as the men and sometimes better. So thank you.